wants to write. So welcome to the second EGM meeting of this evening at Attleborough Town Council on 25th July at 6:30, now 6:40. First of all, apologies for absence.
Councillor Dowd, Councillor Ashby.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest.
Can I just ask where we stand on if this goes to planning at Breckland? We have 2 planning officers here.
You don't have any planning officers here, you have planning committee members, and I'm only a substitute. You definitely don't have planning officers here.
Okay, sorry for my
No, it's fine.
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yes,
Please explain.
so if this goes to Breckland to be passed, because it would have to go through planning, wouldn't it?
No, it's the highway authority.
So highway don't have to do that.
No.
Right, fine.
It's nothing to do with Breckland
Yeah.
District Council planning authority. It's the highway authority that will make the decision.
Count.
Does that answer?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
No, it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
thank you. Okay, so item 3, the gold standard bus stop, which I know we've discussed a few times now. There are various views, quite rightly so, both personal and professional. We are in a situation where the county council do want us to make a decision or some kind of direction, and hopefully this evening we can do that, even though I would like to say I'd like the public to be involved at some stage. So, but this will be out, it's on the agenda item. It's for the town council to decide what we would like to do on the options that are being put forward. So I will open it up to councillors. That's their views. So Councillor McKinnon, then Councillor Taylor.
Can I just say, from a personal point of view, as someone who has recently been quite incapacitated, I do not think that anything other than the option of a bus stop at the pickup point is viable. Whatever it looks like, to me, is secondary to it being practical for the use of the public. And unless we're all regular bus users, and I do use it on occasions, I'm not going to say I'm a daily user because I'm not, but I have recently had experience in being incapacitated and knowing that if the bus came, I could not make it from that brick built thing to a proper bus stop. And if you're at a bus stop, and I am speaking now, this is my opinion, speaking as someone who has, as I said, recently been incapacitated, I would want a bus stop with a seat that is secure enough, not one with a folding, wedge to lean against, and something that prevents the elements from getting in over and above and from the side. And speaking as one of the elder population, which is a lot of people that use the bus stop, I think a lot of people would agree with me on that.
Yeah.
And we're all here voicing our personal opinions, and that is my personal opinion, and I think that should take priority over what it looks like and what it obliterates or covers the shops or whatever. And I really know that you're not going to please everybody with all this. But I feel very strongly that I was elected to look after the interests of the whole of the people of Attleborough, and not just 1 or 2 people who feel that it would be an obstruction and an eye line from their shop. Because I think there are a lot of people in Attleborough who are in or have been in my position, and probably more permanently in my position, who would be more than grateful for something that actually works rather than what it looks like or whose shop it obliterates, my opinion.
No, but that's fine. I think just to clarify my understanding from previous conversations, it's not it's one or the other. I think it's in terms of and the wider things of Nackler and the town centre and everything else, that we keep the existing bus stop, but also we do have a new one. And what the new one looks like is up for debate, and sadly being a town plan, these things come into factor.
Surely practicalities rather than.
There's practicalities, but
Yeah.
also there's other things that come into it. So it's not, we keep the old one, we don't have a new one. It's like we have both. And the question is, in terms of new one, what do councillors think? And we've all got our personal views, quite rightly as well. So, Councillor Bond.
Yeah, can I just say, we had 4 images sent round. So I'd like to think that we can focus our minds on those 4 images
Yeah.
rather than plucking other things out of the air or other suggestions, to at least try and keep us on the rails. Because if, like you say, we should make a decision tonight, but we can't have other things being thrown in the pot.
No,
So
exactly.
I'm assuming that we're thinking about those 4 images that were sent a while back, that Michelle sent through.
Yeah, and does everyone have access to this email?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Councillor Taylor, sorry.
Have the email back.
Well, actually, Councillor Bond has asked the question that I was going to ask after Councillor Kinnan, was that obviously today we received way more images to look at than the 4 we were distributed last week. And obviously most of us had responded with a preference on those 4 images last week. And secondly, do we have any dimensions for these? Because actually, because we're talking about practicality, I actually measured out a new bus stop today on the pavement. Everyone can walk home and look at it, and even members of the public, and I'm sure they will look. And that was based on the footprint of our existing bus stop. Whilst we have a lovely wide piece of pavement at the bus stop, actually only part of that park is owned by Norfolk County Council. The rest is actually owned by a private landlord. So feasibly, I know Councillor Taylor has pictures, and I'm sure she'll pass her phone round for all of you to look at them. The practicality is, if it's right up as far as it can go to the bus stop, you have a 90-centimetre gap before you impinge on a private landlord's curtilage, which at any time in the future he could decide to extend his business right up to a maximum, if you move it further down towards our old bus stop, of 1.5 metre width to get people through. So if you put it central to both loading bays, with it being closest to the loading bay, you have a 90-centimetre gap to get a pushchair, a wheelchair, or even a human being through, should any of the businesses decide to use their curtilage. If you move it down 1 footprint of our existing bus stop, you have a 90-centimetre gap at one end of it to a maximum of 1.5 metres. So as much as I actually put a preference in this week for a bus stop, so we could have had it done, and but actually having measured it out, as Norfolk County Council haven't sent any measurements, I actually do worry that we could say yes to something tonight, County Council could build it, and as there's nowhere in our town centre for any of our businesses to expand, because we're ring like landlocked on a one-way system. If those businesses ever did decide to build to their curtilage, you wouldn't get a human being through it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I mean, that's an interesting point. I personally disagree with what you've said, but it's an interesting point that we do need to consider. We do need to provide some kind of appropriate facility, particularly with RTI, real-time information, and that needs to be expanded throughout the rest of the town, particularly down London Road and Tony Wimpey. I hear your point about, yes, it's probably privately owned, but there will be access rights over for the public, and it doesn't necessarily mean that private landlord can stop anyone doing that or build on it. So, but I take your point, and it is interesting to see what you've put out there. The key, okay, let's break this down into 2 principles. One, do we want a bus stop covered with real-time information next to the bus stop? Yes or no? Let's just answer that question.
Yes.
Right. Secondly, what does it look like? That's a sticking point at the moment in terms of not obliterating the view. And it's not particular companies or businesses that are saying you're going to obliterate this, but I think visually in terms of how does it look is important. And certainly on the continent, they spend a fortune in terms of looking at how it looks visually, compared to us in the UK. That's the second point of view. So there's two things. One, do we want a bus stop? Yes, no. Secondly, which one we're going to go for if these are the options. So Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Lane, and then Councillor Susan.
Which pool of pictures are we going through? The ones that we had last week or the ones that we had before?
Can we go through the first? Sorry, let's go through the first one. Do we agree as a town council that we need a bus stop with real-time information next to where the bus stop is? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right, so we all agree that. Secondly, in terms of design, let's have a debate and let's try and close this up this evening. Sorry, yeah,
Right.
Councillor Lane, then Councillor Susan,
Okay, so
and then
this,
Councillor Bond.
this meeting is to consider the latest information and correspondence received from Norfolk County Council regarding the progression of the scheme. Within that, he talks about consider the town council's request. I can confirm NCC are happy to fund the following: cantilever style bus shelter installed close to the bus stop boarding point, real-time information display installed in the cantilever. We said about that. Cycle storage in an area suitable to potentially accommodate a future cycle hire bay, and supplementary bench seating. Now, at the meeting, the extraordinary meeting that was held on the 3rd of May, there was a lengthy discussion regarding the different options available to the town. Some councillors agreed in principle, subject to having a say in the type of shelter. That's what we're now discussing. Some councillors are happy to proceed, and some councillors do not wish to see the existing bus shelter demolished. Alternative use, such as a cycle storage, are discussed. This chap from, I can't remember what his name is, the guy from NCC, has says, while I know there is affection for the current brick shelter, it is a town council asset responsibility, and funding for a new shelter at the boarding point,
£10.
£10, is seen as the priority over refurbishing an aging shelter. My RTI suppliers also confirmed that installing a heavy screen with a brick structure isn't advisable. So what we're saying is, we are now going to discuss installing the bus shelter upon the recommendations of NCC, who I'm sure would only recommend bus shelters which we can accommodate in the space available, because they know what space is available. Therefore, the old bus shelter, they've said to us, is our responsibility, and that is up to us. Yeah, am I right in all that? No,
Kind of.
They won't basically, we can do what we like with the old bus shelter, but they won't be,
They
won't be.
they're not going to fund that. If we want to do anything else, bus shelter, unless we want to send it to.
I don't think any council suggested we try to improve the existing bus shelter. It's keep it there.
That was the
It's keep it there, but
Keep it
also
there and do
what
something.
we've agreed is we need a new one next to where the bus stop is.
Got it.
Sorry, can I just jump in there?
Sorry,
quickly?
beg your pardon.
Because it's to do with, we were hoping that we'd be greedy in our funds. So we could have the existing shelter with real-time information in and tidy it up as much as we could, how much the county could pay to do it. Have real-time information in there, but then a canopy to protect people from the elements with real-time information in there as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so this email has come off the back of me responding with that request, which was everything that we hoped to get. This is their response to that.
I've just got two more things to finish. Sorry, Roger.
Oh, I finished.
So my second point is about the structure obliterating the view or whatever, affecting the businesses. We have two businesses there. One is a cafe, the other one is a retail shop that shuts every day at 2 o'clock. The structure will be made of glass or whatever, which we can see through. Regarding the designs, we've got some to choose from. And while I agree it's aesthetically nice to have something, I think the practicalities at the moment need to override that personal view. Also, there are bus shelters throughout this country, all over the place. And, you know, as has been said, we're not exactly a little thatched place like Lavenham where we need to worry too much. And I think this has been going on since May, and I really think we need to make some decisions and move this forward, because the people of Attleborough, we want to encourage them to use the bus, and we need to provide for the vulnerable, provide for the infirm, and by just all we're discussing is designs in that, which is affecting the day-to-day living of the disabled people in the town, the vulnerable in the town, and I think we need to just get this sorted. I'll finish now.
No, thank you very much. I mean, some interesting points there, and it's not the personal businesses. I think it's how you go through the town, what it looks like. Yes, we do need to encourage public transport and people using buses, which is why people from the hinterland might want to drive into Attleborough and park and get a bus going to Norwich, but obviously decisions have been made on that's not going to happen. Now paying, yes, we need to make a decision. Now, there's either a lack of ambition in terms of architecture, or we try and do something different. Yeah, we're not in any shape, way, or form, but you know, there is a standard of architecture of let's get cheap and cheerful, thanks very much, and that's what the county will do. Or we want Attleborough to stand out to do something different. Now, if that's a sticking point, I'll concede, you know, you go with the cheap and cheerful. You know, that's what the county are going to do. But, you know, there's a wider discussion on the attractiveness of the town, I would suggest.
Yeah, aesthetics is always difficult, isn't it? I think, yes, the bog standard stuff. I mean, I was in Norwich the other day, and the ones with the sedum roofs, the sedum's all dead. It doesn't look good. We do need something better than that. But the problem with aesthetics is that whatever my personal choice would be, someone else's doing. So in order to make a choice, you have to be offered several options. And in a situation like this, then you have a vote, don't you? I mean, that's the simplest way forward.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest, although we haven't, I should have asked Michelle to bring the screen along so we could actually see. We had 4, didn't we? And you know, number 1, number 2. I mean, that's the only way you're going to do it. It's not exact, but we all know what committees are like. If you ask a committee to design something, you end up with a camel. And so you have to narrow those choices down rather than have something that we all mystically think should be ideal.
No, absolutely. Sorry.
Can I just respond
Can I
to
just
that?
Councillor Clark and then Councillor Susan this turn.
Firstly, I don't mind going upstairs and getting those if that's helpful for people. Secondly, not all councillors responded to me, but all the councillors did respond. It came down to 2. Which I felt were quite similar designs, but everyone said 3 or 4. Yeah. So I think we already have a bit of consensus in which direction councillors were going in. So there would be a possibility for me to go back and say, these are the 2 designs that the council are happy with, or I could print them out, you could come down and make a decision on one, and go back and say, can we have something that looks like this, if that's helpful.
Can I suggest, because I saw those emails, I didn't want to respond until we had this discussion, but we're down to, and the bog standard Norfolk County Council one was being kicked out.
Shall I go and get them?
No.
No? Don't want to take pictures?
Well, what I'm going to suggest, what I'm going to suggest is, we're down to options 3 and 4, and I've seen the emails, and I think there is some consensus there. And I think it would be useful to, if we can agree, at least narrowing those down, that the town council agrees tonight, it's entirely up to you. If you do want to see if you do want to see the images, then please do tell me, but I think we've all seen them.
If I may, I'm assuming most people here have access to their emails via their phones and the tablets they've got in front of them.
No.
I don't mind you looking at mine then. If you literally just search in your emails gold standard bus shelter, the thread comes up that Michelle sent us with those design options. And it was between this one being number 3.
Yeah.
And this one being number 4.
Yeah.
They were the two
I
preferred
think
options.
Reese is the most voted on one.
So I
Councillor
don't know if
Taylor,
that's just an easier.
please.
My personal view would be number 4, up with an extra bay. So it's.
And these things can be
So,
amended,
email that was sent on the ribbon.
and I would agree as well.
Yes, yeah.
But that's my personal point
yeah,
of view.
that's.
Yeah.
I carry no weight in shape, weight. Councillor Sue's a big problem.
No, that's right. I think we've all seen the email, the anonymous email that was sent by a member of the public, and I think that needs to be addressed in this meeting. And that is obviously to do with the vulnerable people that Councillor McKinnon has mentioned.
Yeah.
And that has hit home a bit, that email, and I think we're here to represent that part of the community. And I think we need to remember that obviously people who can't read, who have special educational needs, who can't move as quickly, that needs to be considered. And also, when the elements, for example, the rain, the wind, etc., they need a shelter, and the clue's in the name, bus shelter.
Absolutely.
So I vote for number 1 simply because that would encompass the vulnerable people that we have in our community. So they have somewhere to sit, they have somewhere to shelter, and they can see what is going on when the bus comes. In terms of it obscuring any businesses, I think that is not necessarily true. The glass is obviously there, it is transparent, as the email said, and I think we have to balance the majority of our residents over the 2 businesses that it could potentially.
And I'm not suggesting the 2 businesses have inputted this in any shape, way, or form. I've not discussed this with them. What I will say, any bus stop in this country needs to be DDA compliant. Sadly, down London Road, bus stops that have been put in are not DDA compliant. So, first of all, that is the first thing, and I totally agree with Mr. Smith's comments and what you've just said, Councillor D'Souza. Yes, they do. They need to be DDA. They need to best thing. These are principles of design, and they can be amended. And we need that discussion with the county. So it's either get a bog standard bus shelter, or we want to do something different in Attleborough that can be, rolled out elsewhere. That's attractive. That makes it attractive to bus users. So totally agree with you. They need to be DDA compliant and apply to all members of our community that can easily access them. Absolutely. I can't remember. So was it Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I was just going to echo the sentiments that have already been made by Councillor Bond, that we've got these 4 designs. I think to actually make a decision on one of those designs tonight would be appropriate. I am mindful, obviously, Councillor D'Souza has just commented on the representations we've received today. I think if you want to be wholly inclusive, the only way to do that is actually to go out to public consultation and treat everybody equally, not the one representation we've received.
Which is why, I've said in the past, have a county consultant. They haven't.
Yeah.
They've come to the town council, which unfortunately the burden is on us, and quite rightly have this open discussion and bring in all these issues to debate and try and bring down to, if we are forced into this decision or encouraged into this decision in this timescale, then that's what we've got to do. So, Councillor Leslie, then Councillor Tone.
I was just going to suggest a couple of things. Taking on board what has been said by Sue and other considerations that we've read through as well, I've kind of changed my opinion a little bit, and I'm looking for something that has a bit more protection to it. And number 1 is now my favourite, where it's changed. So I'm very happy to vote on these 4. But before I do, I think it would be really nice from the public that have opted to turn up to our meeting today, just by way of having you know, the public involved before we vote. I think voting after we've heard from them is a good decision rather than voting after, you know, before we do.
Agree, yeah.
So I'm happy to propose suspending the standing order so they can participate in this.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. I'm all open for open conversation.
I haven't seen the pictures.
Do you want me to bring the pictures round?
Please.
Are you okay with it?
No,
He's like working on the floor that we.
you do realise.
I can't find something.
Done before, it's only done.
That's three. Yeah.
That's all.
Yes, am I right thinking that the wall is the only one that offers any form of shelter?
It's the shelter.
You're correct, yeah.
In
In that case, if you want to provide shelter, why are you considering ones that don't provide shelter?
Protection, I think you mean.
Yeah, protection.
All round protection.
Because if you're
They all offer
stopping,
shelter, but they
Yeah.
don't offer protection around the sides.
if you're
Not all
looking
one does.
2, 3 or 4 in the middle of winter waiting for a bus,
You might as well stand in the rain.
Yeah.
spot on.
Or in the unclassed shelter.
Perfectly obvious that
Yeah.
number one, that's actually got sides and a front, and that will keep people protected.
Can I just say, anybody here who's ever got the bus up to the university from the Park and Ride, they've got, bus shelters there. And they're quite good because they've got those stupid seats that are like slopes, so they're not proper seats. But they have a back, but then a partial front. So they're sort of halfway between the two of what we're looking at there, you know, so they are slightly.
That's what
So-
I'm saying to Philip when he brought that round, if you had an end where it was sort of slightly more.
Yeah,
open,
so that
an
there was a
extra bay, like
shelter.
Robin said,
Yeah, rather
with
than
an extra bay which was more open, then you sort of combine the two elements.
Okay, first of all,
Thank you.
thank you very much for your input, if that's okay, really appreciate that. Secondly, you are recorded, sticking your tongue out to the chair of the town council, it's now been recorded.
I'll pay my
Thank you
£10
very much for
fine later. Charity.
I'm not saying it's not warranted, but recorded. It is difficult. I mean, I can go through, and I'm sure Councillor Bond and others can. You travel world. There's so many different designs of bus stops that are far more attractive than what we see here that work quite rightly. You know, you could argue there's 8 seats in there, but I've seen a bus stop where there's 20 people waiting. You're not going to accommodate all those people in no shape, way, or form, which is why we need to keep both them. Well, the existing and the new one. It's not going to accommodate everyone. Aesthetics and design, I believe, going forward as a town, as we grow, is important. Not just get something in that's cheap and cheerful, thanks very much. That's my personal point of view. But we do need to move on. You know, and we've spoken about this so long now. You know, we've spoken about this much longer than do we want 4,000 houses? You know, oh, and another comment comes to Westby.
I just think we should aspire for the best that we can get for the town. I think we'll be criticised endlessly if we don't aspire to the best we can. And I think it's got to be offer protection. I personally, I don't see what the obsession with the original bus shelter is, but no one's saying it's got to be knocked down.
No,
it can be reused,
and I think we're saying we're keeping that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should keep it. There's absolutely no point in
it's that additional. It's that additional one.
Just a backup. I mean, as far as the architecture is concerned, my personal view is it's standing in front of 2 1980s lock-up shop units that embody the worst of everything. They're not in keeping with the town anyway. I mean, if it was sat outside the church, that'd be a completely different issue. Yeah,
sure.
I think we've just got to aspire to the best we can for the people of the town.
Okay, can I ask someone to make
Yes,
please?
Move this on. option one, having considered now the facts and heard from things tonight, I've changed my opinion now, and I feel that option one is by far the best one in front of us in principle. And is
No, let's not go for principle.
but what I'm saying is that option one, it has the enclosed area for cover, it has the seating that is suitable, and it is a step up from the bog standard that was presented to us as the gold standard bus stop in the first instance. It has more architectural design in it. So I propose option one as the basis for us to go back to NCC.
I'll second that.
And I'm happy to
Councillor
second.
D'Souza,
I was going to say I'm
sorry.
actually happy to second councillor Taylor's proposal of 4 with an extra bay.
Sorry, so the first proposal is option one.
No, councillor Taylor's proposal was 5-10 minutes ago.
Okay, so that was option
4 with an extra bay.
okay, so
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
yeah, so correct, you put that proposal forward, we've got seconded for that.
Yeah, I just seconded it.
So councillor S. Taylor. Before we vote on that, there's a counter proposal of option one, which has been seconded by councillor D'Souza. So let's, first one, vote option 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then option 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, did you vote?
I vote for neither because I
Well,
don't
that's
support
what,
either.
6. So
You're not right to. No.
I wouldn't vote for any of them.
Yeah.
quite frankly. So I've abstained. I think there's better designs out there. That's but I'm happy to go with councillors' decisions on this. So it seems to be the council have decided option 1 as the basis of discussion with Norfolk County Council, with the view of retaining the existing bus stop and RTI in there. And also, I think we agreed at last meeting that we have further discussions about sorting out London Road and Norwich Road bus stops. Because if they are, we need a standard design for the town. So happy to take questions. So Councillor Lane, Councillor Bond,
Can I request that the initial discussions we had with them was the possibility of them providing lockable storage areas for us as well, which could be positioned. My understanding was lockable storage areas, sorry, for cycles, that could be positioned where we think appropriate. So could we continue that discussion with them about lockable storage areas for bicycles, because obviously that will encourage people to use the buses.
I'm excusing myself, I only got back from Kenya a couple of hours ago and I would like to spend some time with them this evening.
I was just catching up on the stories, Sam.
Pardon?
They seem to have had a good time.
Yeah, I think they have. I'll see you later.
Right.
Thank you.
I was just going
Yeah,
to,
no, absolutely.
yeah, I was just going to say to emphasise what Councillor Westby said about, yeah, we've got to get the best for the town. So I think, you know, it is the basis, but the final say, I think that's what council's got to realise. We're not,
No.
yeah, we're going for what is best.
Yeah, I think we need to aspire for the town.
Yeah.
Going forward.
The best of what is available, not what we might dreams available.
I think you has some time with your suggestion about for the rest of the town having a standardised something for the whole town, for the design. But you know, I think that's a really good idea that we could, you know, come agree on a design and then, you know, sort of have a uniformity around the town for future bus shelters.
Subject to space.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say, is that I literally just find it, you know, quite extraordinary that we've got so hung up in a discussion about an additional facility where there's an existing facility, and yet there's so many bus stops around our town that have zero provision for any of our residents, and representations have been made numerous times over the last, 18 months, 2 years, to numerous members of this council about bus stops primarily on Norwich Road or New Road and Harper Road on our services. And we haven't been more proactive in trying to actually facilitate those that have nothing. And yet we've been splitting hairs over somewhere where there's already a semi-adequate bus stop provided.
Could I just add to that, the idea of engaging with Norfolk, and Rob Pratt, is that his name? Rob Pratt, is that he will come on side and we can have ongoing discussion. We raised the fact that there was under provision in developments, and he was very surprised that it wasn't picked up by Bretland in the planning because of Brexit.
Well,
so there are a whole host of things that have fallen through the cracks, not just us not pursuing it anymore. There are other people who are responsible that didn't pick it up.
But that would have been the highway authority to say we need bus.
And it's, yeah, so working with him, hopefully this will be the beginning of a good relationship, and we can start working it up so we do get that response. And him on our side, working from both ends, not falling foul of bad planning from the other authority.
The point to make on that is that it's the bus stop at Queen Square that was the issue. We weren't at liberty to talk about any other bus stops. We need to, but that was an issue at hand.
And I think we have discussed that, yes, we'll debate this and make an agreement on it, but subject to all the other bus stops. And it's been raised 2 years ago about Norwich Road.
We have got some money for that.
We need to aspire to options 3 or 4 at the other bus stops.
Yeah.
The developers should be paying for it.
Yeah.
Because they, quite frankly, I know this is being recorded, but they messed up.
It's criminal.
That's what Rob Pratt said.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor.
May I just make the last point before I shoot off? I think it's great we've come to a decision, and my option of number 1 was always what I thought was best for the part of the community that needed shelter. And as Councillor TK said, you know, we are missing opportunities on Norwich Road. Hopefully this is just the beginning of improvements on bus shelter, and we can move further down with extra funding. But we've given Councillor Webster that we didn't want to lose that funding. So let's, you know, the middle of the town is the prominent focus, and then if we can move outwards.
No, absolutely, and it is a very, very small step. Neil Armstrong. But in terms of, you know, sustainable transport, it's about walking, cycling, it's about bus, and, you know, hopefully this opens the door for discussion with the county and also Bretland. I mean, this is minutiae compared to what we should be doing for the town going forward. So I'm sorry.
Are we still suspended?
No.
Well,
sorry.
I'll propose
Okay.
I'll propose we suspended.
Yeah,
The councillors are happy and very conscious of time, but, and I'm very happy for people to communicate. So, Mr. Smith.
What's the time frame on this? Because it's 4 months since this first hit the council.
I have no idea. We'll come back on
It
that.
was supposed to be September.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some slight delays, but they were still fairly hopeful they wouldn't fall too far behind schedule. So I think it would be nice if it was done before the bad weather hit.
I was heard on behalf of residents that now it's finally got sorted, it doesn't drag on any longer.
No, so that's fine. Right, can I close that down? Any councillors got any final comments? I know we've overrun, but I'm of the view I'm happy to discuss stuff to the nth degree rather than. Sorry, time's up.
About the
See you.
decisions, we should just,